What's up guys, I'm back and today we're going to be taking a look at this Les Paul Studio guitar. This is the most affordable guitar in Gibson's lineup and it's been around for a long time, but it's undergone a couple of changes, and I just kind of wanted to take a look and see how this thing compares to the old faded models that I've played in the past that both my brother and our former singer from my old band, they both have, and I wanted to see if it was as good as I remember it being way back in the early 2000s. So before I get any further, I would like to give a big thanks to the guys at Zzounds for sending me this guitar to try out here in the studio, to take it on stage to see how it performs in a real world gigging musician's environment, and then bring it back here and talk about it with you guys. Okay, so if you're not familiar with the studio guitars by Gibson, these are basically stripped down, just the bare bones essentials, meat and potatoes that you need from a Les Paul. And as clickbaity as the title for the video sounds, I'm 100% in the camp of this being almost everything that a player who wants a Les Paul could ask for. But you have to be okay with the stripped down looks. But as far as the core features of what makes the Les Paul such a great guitar, this has it at a much lower price tag than the standard or the custom shop guitars and all those much higher end Les Pauls that Gibson make. Now, other than a ever so slightly thinner body, I believe that compared to any other Les Paul in the lineup, everything is exactly the same other than some visual tweaks. And there are a couple of guitars in the Les Paul lineup that Gibson build that are a little bit different. There's one, I'll put information on the screen, but it's got a more comfortable kind of a sculpted heel access for a little bit better upper fret access. And then you've got obviously like the different flame tops and the quilt tops and things like that. But as far as the studio goes, it is meant to be a stripped down, bare bones Les Paul. Okay, now this guitar comes with the Burstbucker Pro pickups, and they sound really good. They've got a nice strong bark up in the upper mid-range and a nice crisp top end, and a very clean and composed low end, especially when you throw a bunch of gain from your amp and you're using this guitar like that. So you could hear that in the intro of the video there. But also one thing that this thing does have is coil tap pickups. So you can split the coils on both of your pickups here for a few more variations on the sound. But honestly, if I'm kind of being truthful with you guys, I really don't think that these things sound very good split coil. They just sort of lose a lot of their authority and power and clarity, and we'll take a listen to that in a little bit. Other than that though, that's pretty much all there is to talk about with the guitar itself. Now the setup is pretty good, but the intonation, it's off for pretty much every string. It's a little bit sharp on every single string, and I did not adjust it before the gig. I just played it as is. And in terms of the other faults with the setup, there really aren't any. The action is nice and low. The neck was set properly. The relief on the neck was set properly. And cosmetically, everything is great, except for a little bit of polishing compound that looks like it's kind of left over here. I'll put a picture on the screen of the leftover compound. I didn't want to touch anything because I wanted you guys to see kind of exactly how this guitar came straight out of the case. So yeah, other than the intonation not being right and a little bit of polishing compound left on the neck, everything else on this guitar is absolutely perfect. Okay, enough talking. We're gonna hear some more sounds from this guitar, and we're gonna check out some clean sounds and also how these pickups sound when I split the coil. So let's go. So you can hear a little bit of the top end got kind of shaved off there, and in my opinion, when you split a coil, you want that extra chime and kind of that spank and sparkle from what you would typically associate with a single coil. But with these pickups, it just lost a lot of the top end that I would like to hear on a split coil sound. All right, I'm going to kick it back over to channel 2 on the Mark VII, and we're going to hear some of those more kind of higher gain crunch sounds. All right, let's jump back over to channel 3 and check out some higher gain sounds, and I'm also going to mess around with the EQ on there to get some more of the scoop kind of metal sounds, just to see how far we can push this guitar. Hear it wanting to feed back. Like if I kill the noise gate, like it's pretty much instant feedback, and it's like always there even when you're playing. Like just the slight little breaks there in the playing, you can hear the feedback like always just wanting to jump into the sound. So yeah, go back to some drop D here. All right, it is time for the post-gig report. Now, I took this guitar on stage this weekend with a JCM 800 and the Synergy Syn 1 loaded with the Killer Cali module. And it was a action-packed show with tons of new awesome gear to try out on the stage and to see what of this stuff do I really like on stage and what stuff maybe is a little bit better in the studio. So for me on stage, this guitar suffered from the exact same problem that I had with my Schecter Sun Valley Super Shredder stock pickups, in that feedback was very prone and present on stage, and it was something that I had to be very mindful of because I didn't have a noise gate pedal on the stage. I just had to be a little bit more careful with the breaks when we kind of would stop playing, and I'd have to either be quick on the volume pedal or just kind of briefly, just kind of like ever so slightly roll the volume knob back here, but then remember to raise it back up for the next song. So other than the feedback problem from the pickups, the guitar performed great. I mean, it's a Les Paul. I'm extremely comfortable with this shape and the way that these things play, the way that they sound. So it was not a strange sensation to be holding this on stage the way it has been for some of these other guitars like the LTD Phoenix and the Dave Grohl 335. Those much differently shaped guitars, they kind of presented their own physical challenges on the stage, whereas this just felt like my Tokai that I've been playing for forever. So yeah, outstanding stage guitar other than the feedback problem with the pickups, but again, that's something that is easily fixable with either different pickups or a noise gate or just not using as much gain. And also, I mean, a Les Paul through a JCM 800, I mean, it does not get any more iconic than that, and the whole setup just absolutely ripped all night long. And I cannot wait to show you guys the 800 and that Synergy Killer Cali module. Okay, so let's talk about what I think is the elephant in the room here with this guitar, and that's the price tag. At $1,600, it's not the cheapest thing in the world, but also it's the cheapest guitar that you can get with Gibson's name on the headstock if you want a Les Paul. Now, for right around that same $1,000 to $1,500 price point, you have some outstanding choices from Japan in the terms of your Tokais. You have the Bernies, the Grecos, the Edwards guitars, and they're all fantastic instruments. I mean, my Tokai easily on par with plenty of the Les Paul standards that I played right when I got that, because I wanted to make sure that when that return window that I had with that Tokai, was it as good as the Gibsons that claimed to be. So I absolutely will vouch for the quality of the Tokais any day. They do make them in Japan, and they make some in China. I don't know how good the Chinese ones are, but the Japan ones are just freaking phenomenal. Now, I think that there's a more interesting alternative to this guitar, and it comes from Gibson themselves in the form of a few different Epiphone Les Pauls. Now, the first one is the Adam Jones Les Paul. Now, the silver burst color on that thing is absolutely beautiful, and you also get different pickups that probably can cope with higher gain without the feedback that this guitar has. The other option is the Les Paul Custom, and it's the Inspired by Gibson. You get it in either black or white, and I think they look amazing. And you get all of those visual treatments with terms of like the multi-layer binding on the body and the headstock, and they just look really, really great. And the third one is actually just the Epiphone Les Paul Standard. And again, you get some binding on the body, and it's a little bit less naked looking than this guitar. And it's right around like maybe $100 less for those guitars than what this one runs. And with those Epiphones, you do get a hard shell case with them. So there's a little bit more value to those if you want essentially the same guitar but without the Gibson name on the headstock. And that's kind of the big, again, that's kind of the whole crux of the discussion here is, do you want this name on the headstock, or do you want a guitar that can be every bit as good, if not, maybe better, with a different logo on the headstock? You have to be, that's kind of like where the rubber meets the road with this guitar and this discussion with this versus some alternatives in the same kind of price range. But if you just want a Gibson Les Paul made in the USA and no frills or anything like that, just a solid workhorse that can go on stage and you not have to worry about getting scratched up or beat up. I'll show you what my Tokai looks like here in a minute. But it's not some extremely valuable collector's piece or anything like that. It's not a Murphy Lab or something like that where you would not want to take it on stage and get damaged, because those are more of an investment piece than what this is. This is made to be played, to get beat up, and just to rock and roll. All right, well, that is going to wrap up this review for the Les Paul Studio guitar. And again, big thanks to the guys at Zzounds for sending me this to try out for a little while and to see what I think about it. And before I go, I'm going to show you what 16 or so years of gigging with also a working man's Les Paul over there, what that looks like. And I'm going to play these things side by side so you can hear what mine sounds like with the Sheptone Pickups versus how this one sounds. And yeah, that'll wrap it up for this video. Thanks for hanging out with me, and if you like it, don't forget to show those buttons and subscribe and all that junk some love down there to help my channel grow and to help get these videos out there to more viewers like yourself. So anyways, I will see you guys in the next video. Take care. Bye. All right, so here is the Tokai, and right up here, it's kind of hard to see, but the finish has worn to almost like a matte consistency. Yeah, there you go. It's like right there. You can actually feel it. And just I've tried to take as good of care as possible, but kind of like these little chips and nicks all over kind of the edge. But the back of it's where the real business has happened, and there's tons of scratches there, and it's gotten chewed up from the wireless packs over the years there. Just again, all the edges have all these little nicks and dings, just like little bitty chips and everything like that. But other than that, it's still in pretty good shape, and the headstock kind of chewed up there at the top of that and along the top edges. And this is kind of what I mean by why you would want to take something that's not $3,000, $4,000 or more on stage. This is a working man's guitar right here, and this is 100% put in the work for me over more than a decade, and I don't even know how many hundreds and hundreds of shows that this guitar has been on stage with me. So this is kind of, when you talk about the no frills approach to the studio, you talk about the no frills approach to the studio guitar, that's what kind of like the whole like spirit of why you would get one of these guitars that maybe doesn't have a fancy flame top or all the binding and stuff like that. Like, not every musician needs stuff like that, and for me, I didn't want anything fancy with this guitar because I knew it would probably get beat up and eventually look like this, assuming that I kept it as long as I have. And so yeah, we'll go ahead and we'll take a listen to this thing side by side with the studio. And I will do the editing thing where I'd play like a little snippet of the sound and then kind of cut between the two different guitars.